Good morning. So today we are wrapping up our exploration of the archetypal pattern of the creative or the artists, of which there are many in this community. And just as a reminder, you know, we use the scripture of you are made in the image and likeness of God. Male and female, God created them. And so as co-creators of God, we are here to use our imaginations, and we are here to co-create our reality into manifestation. And why not have some fun and be creative about it, right? Last week we talked about the idea of how important it is to inspire one's inner artist by perhaps going on artist dates, which are anything that feeds your inner creative, going to a museum, an art supply store, buying a journal if you're a writer, doing those things that feed you to help bring that into expression. Because the truth is, we all have a creative pulse that is constantly calling us to create. Julia Cameron said it this way: our creative dreams and yearnings come from a divine source. As we move toward our dreams, as we move towards our creativity, we move towards divinity. So as you are creating, as you are entering into that process, you are moving toward God. You are moving toward the divine source. You are expressing more and more of that. So I have asked the community to give me their thoughts, ideas, examples of their art, again, of which there are many. And Mariella, who usually sits in the second row, who's not here today, wrote me a little piece about her experience with painting. She said back in '88, after much urging from a girlfriend, she signed up for an oil painting class in Bothell. And she said, as I drove away from signing up, tears were running down my cheek. And I thought, I guess I really need to do this. Anybody ever have that experience when you've signed up for something or you show up somewhere and all of a sudden the tears start coming? I've had many people say it happens when they come to the church for the first time. They sit down and there's these tears. And I think one of the experiences with that is our soul is saying, yes, that you're feeding me, that this is an important place. So she had that experience when she simply signed up for a painting class. She said, I started on a double hibiscus photo from Hawaii, and I'd paint all evening, then I would put it away the next week, and then I would take it to the studio and look what I had done, and I couldn't believe the beautiful work that I saw. Jim made me put the painting, as it was in its process, in the living room on a chair so that I could see it all the time. And I began to believe that I really could make such a beautiful painting. And so we see this process with Mariella of feeding that inner artist, right? Of allowing it to have voice, to come forward, and to see how it was blessing her as well as everyone else. And she adds at the end that my eyes betray me now, and I am no longer able to mix the colors to fulfill my goals, but just thinking about it fills me up. Just thinking about it fills my soul. So we see how important that creative process is in simply feeling alive. So if we don't participate in the creative process or give voice to the artist archetype in our own unique way, the truth is the world loses out because they don't get to hear our individual voice. There will never be another person like you. There will never be another expression, the way you bring it into the world, the way you express your divinity. There'll never be another one. So it's like imperative because we all benefit when we show up. Your voice is needed, and we recognize that there are many ways that we may stop the creative process. We procrastinate. Perhaps we're afraid that what we put out is going to be ordinary or not very good, or we're afraid of failure, and all these can lead to being blocked. And what Julia Cameron said is, how do you know, excuse me, how do you know when you're blocked? Jealousy. So when you're feeling jealous of something that someone else is doing, it's a call that you need to do it in yourself, right? I remember one time I was guest speaking at a church a number of years ago, and this woman who was about my age came up to me and she said, "You know, I could do what you do." And I said, "Oh, that's fine." And she was so angry, and she's like, "I could do what you do." And I was like, "Well, good, I hope you do it." And I realized later that she really could do what I did, but she wasn't doing it, and so she was mad at me, right? So when you find that you're jealous and you're mad at somebody for doing something, it's a call that's saying, you need to do that. You need to show up, and you need to do that. So, I have asked Erin to, since she is like our artist extraordinaire, to share some of her insights about the process of the artist. And this is part of a presentation that those of you who are in Dios may have seen. So if we could lower the screen, because Erin has some slides and a PowerPoint to show us as well. So let's give Erin a round of applause.
Every year, twice a year, we do a Dios intro training, but this year, in honor of the archetypes theme, our Dios trainings were part introduction and then part examining the artist archetype, and we did, I think, 3 hours of looking at that, but this is just a little tiny 3-minute section here. Go ahead, let's take a look at the first slide. So you can see on the upper right what my friends think I do, what mom thinks, so my parents think I'm nuts, what society thinks, what my boss thinks, what I think I do, and then what I actually do. But here's where it gets meta, because the creator of this graphic chose all these pictures. So this is how he sees himself, but so is this. And he's holding these disparate perspectives simultaneously, and he's just one artist. Let's take a look at the next one. She's also a visual artist, but she has different friends, different parents, different boss. Moreover, she feels their judgment differently. Let's look at the next one. So I don't know if you can see those. So dancers have it rougher. Sometimes society just decides things about you without asking permission and based on really surface understanding. Let's take a look at another one. So I don't know if you can see that. That's Jimi Hendrix playing his guitar with his tongue. I like this guy's parents a lot. So what all of these graphics are pointing to is the fact that as artists and as humans, we don't control what other people think about us, and we have to be okay with that. And it's a really Buddhist kind of thing, facing that fear. We might be misinterpreted and misunderstood or judged really unfairly. Yup. That's the end of that sentence. It's the price of admission to the arts, but also to the world, to the material plane. If we want to love, we acknowledge that there might be pain. If we want to connect and communicate, we acknowledge that we might be misunderstood. There are going to be multiple perceptions, multiple perspectives, and we can hold all of those simultaneously. Let's look at one more. So there's a website called Perception versus Fact, where you can build one of these for yourself, for your job. So imagine right now that you could build one, only the word at the top was human. Or better yet, the word at the top was your name, was Mitch or Randy. What would be the picture that appears on what my friends think? what my parents think. Oy. Society, my boss. What would be the picture on how I see myself? And then what would the picture be for all that I actually am? And then remember that each one of those is just a variation on how I see myself. That's enough. You can close that. That last frame, all that I am. I don't know anyone who can accurately fill that frame, except maybe God. And my job as an artist, as a fellow artist, is to let God do that and be okay with it. Thank you.
How many of you saw yourself in some of those images? So I also want to call out today the tapestries, because that also is a form of art that we have here in our community. And I think sometimes because they're around so much, we may not notice them, but it is one of the first things that our visitors see. I think these tapestries give us a window into different religions. And Annie said that they build a visual bridge to different spiritual paths. So just out of curiosity, how many of you have contributed to the tapestries? Have you worked on them or donated? Just look around the room and see how many people have participated in the different tapestries over the years. And I've asked Annie, so what is the process? So the tapestries were envisioned after 2001 because it just felt like there's so much fighting that happens over different religions, right? It's like my religion is right and your religion is wrong. And so there was a vision to bring in all the different religions into one place, so to tear down that wall and that boundary that we put up sometimes. So each one takes about a year to make, and we began with Islam because that was what was calling us at the time. Annie's been the one continuous person on all the different tapestries, even though different people have worked on them. And the first step in creating a tapestry is to assemble a team that is interested in the specific spiritual path. And then they immerse themselves, sometimes for a year. They study, they research, they look at how children see the religion, they go on field trips, they bring in speakers, and they just immerse themselves in the whole religion and the process, and then they surrender to an intuitive process. And Annie said one of her jobs is to be the cheerleader, to kind of keep people on task. And then they begin to sketch out ideas, perhaps making a collage, and then they'll reach a unified agreement when it feels right. And then it's time to actually create it. And she said they have to struggle with the idea of not being caught in making it look artistic or making it look pretty, but to let it emerge in itself. So you'll see all the different ones that we have. And art, as Erin has said, isn't really art unless it's seen. You must bring it out to be shared. You must bring it out to be seen. And we always have a Sunday that is dedicated to one of our tapestries. We'll have the music, we'll have the message as we sort of bless it and bring it in. And we'll be doing our next tapestry this July. And then after that, there's one more. You'll see there's 2 blank spots on the wall, and we'll be filling those in at the end of the year. So let's give Annie and everyone who's worked on a round of applause for the tapestries. They really do bless our community and bless our building and allow us a window into other religions. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this is also Memorial Day. And the truth is that Memorial Day kind of started as an artistic approach to grief, if you will. It started by decorating the graves. It actually, according to David Blight, it began in Charleston, South Carolina after the Civil War. And he said, what you have is the Black Americans who were recently freed from slavery, announcing to the world with flowers, with their feet, and with songs what war had been about. And they were creating kind of a second Independence Day or a second American Revolution. And we continue in that process by bringing flowers to the graves or decorating them. But you see, there's a sense of art that we're bringing with our grief. So I would like actually just to take a moment of silence to acknowledge all of those who have died in war, whether through serving in this country or other countries, or people who also have been victims of war. So I invite you just to hold in your heart the idea of peace. And if you specifically know someone who lost their life in a war, please speak their name now. And we call upon the angels, we call upon all those beings and bless them as they continue their journey in life. Amen. So in continuing with artists in our community, first of all, I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you are artists? That doesn't mean you make your living at art, but you're an artist, a creative. I'd say that's about 80% of the room. And that's, again, it's why we're here. And there are so many different forms, and Carl, if you would be so willing to come up. Carl is an amazing poet. I always feel blessed. I'll get you a microphone. I always feel blessed whenever I hear his poetry, so he's going to bless us with that.
Thank you, Karen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read a poem, and then I'm going to talk about the process of creating the poem, and then I'm going to read it again. So this poem is called Little Things. When I visited Ev at the retirement home, she talked about focusing on the little things. She said little things grow more important with time. I understand that. This individual life is such a broad canvas, like an intricate Bosch painting with many scenes. Dad's suicide, our recovery from it, youthful lust, poetry, and betrayal by girlfriends, losing the job and living in India, media attention and counterculture success, marriages unhappy and happy, Sam's birth and being a dad, career, crisis, depression, and rising from the ashes. At some point, the edges of the frame pull in. Details, the little things once passed over, become the central focus. Details become the real art. You rubbing lotion on my back, Dad scooping me up in a whiskery hug, Sam at 2 standing in my boots, the texture of homemade pie crust, the warmth of the sun on my arm, the grape I fed you that ignited a romance, that conversation where I realized you wanted more from me. Each small memory, more than enough. So I wrote something and I read it to Marcia last night. Now it's completely changed. Because she said, you don't want to do that. So I'm trying something different. So, Ev, the person that made the statement, is my former mother-in-law. She lives right down the street at Mirabella, and she said little things grow more important with time. And it felt very true, and it moved me, and it gave me something I wanted to write about. It was the mysterious seed of the poem that I, as a gardener, wanted to nurture. That's when the central image of the poem came to me. The image of a broad canvas filled with details is meant to contrast and tie these things together in the poem. The major life events begin with my dad and end with me as a dad. The last part of the poem includes details of little things important to me. Earthy, intimate images of my dad, my wife, and my son. Sensual images of things I've loved. And images that speak volumes to my relationship with Marcia. I love using words and feeling their aliveness when they are put together in poetry. I love the mystery of how a poem comes together. I love reading and writing poetry, as the members of the Unity Men's Group know very well. And I very much enjoy this opportunity to share my poem with you. So I'm going to read it one more time, and hopefully you'll get a little more from it this time. Little things. When I visited Ev at the retirement home, she talked about focusing on the little things. She said, little things grow more important with time. I understand that. This individual life is such a broad canvas, like an intricate Bosch painting with many scenes. Dad's suicide, our recovery from it, youthful lust, poetry, and betrayal by girlfriends, losing the job and living in India, media attention and counterculture success, marriages, unhappy and happy, Sam's birth and being a dad, career, crisis, depression, and rising from the ashes. At some point, the edges of the frame pull in. Details, the little things that once passed over, become the central focus. Details become the real art. You rubbing lotion on my itching back. Dad scooping me up in a whiskery hug. Sam, at 2, standing in my boots. The texture of homemade pie crust. The warmth of the sun on my arm. The grape I fed you that ignited a romance. The conversation where I realized you wanted more from me. Each small memory, more than enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. That was beautiful. I have an image from our own Jeffrey Myers, and he gave me permission to share he calls them his children, his latest 3 children, so we've been seeing them up there. And I asked Jeffrey what the creative impulse was for him, and he said that there are random moments when he hears a voice, a call to capture the essence of beauty. And he said, he gave the example of last Sunday being called to go to the rose garden. His purpose is to inspire and empower himself and others to raise the collective consciousness and self-worth of our planet. And we have one in the library. He has cards, and you just see that Jeffrey has a way of seeing and capturing the beauty in nature. I am always astounded and overwhelmed by the images that he sends out in emails, in the Mindsight inspirations. I have used them on my Facebook page as a background picture because some of them just are so exquisite. And it astounds me how he sees with a different eye than whatever I see when I look at a flower. He sees something magical in it. And it gets back again to that individual voice that each one of us has, that we bring something into sight that wasn't necessarily there before. The other photographer and the other artist that I want to call out today is our own Gordon Lee. And Gordon has a gift for doing what Jeffrey does with nature. He has a way of seeing the soul of a person and bringing it out in photographs. He said, the key is not in what I do, it is in who I am being that supports the person, however briefly, to drop his or her self-guarding, self-protecting strategy to survive being photographed. I like the way he says that, to survive being photographed. I wait for their aliveness, I can see it coming, and then I am ready for it when it arrives. Can you not see that in the pictures? He says he also approaches each person being photographed as uniquely divine, capable, a co-creator, a partner, someone who is worthy of respect. So again, you can see that, and there's our own Jay, our beautiful Jay. Now, we wanted to use an example of waiting for that moment of being seen. And this gentleman named Jim has given us permission to use this. And we actually put together a collage of the next slide because none of these actually work too well. And as when most of us are photographed, sometimes it doesn't happen. And you'll see that it didn't quite capture who he is until this last photograph, which he also found. Can you see it? Can we go back to the collage again? Just go back one. And how none of these actually, can we see the beauty of this man necessarily? And then we move to the next one, and we see this incredibly beautiful, kind man that is just shining in this photograph. Gordon said that he exemplifies the qualities that he wishes to see in the partner. He wants to reflect to him or her what he wishes to see and to not give in to fear. When I asked Gordon, where is God in all this? He said, God is someone or something that I rarely talk about, yet that someone or something infuses my work. It's that which can be heard when the mind is quiet. So he's calling out the soul. Just as Jeffrey is calling out the soul in nature, we see that through Gordon and his work is calling out the soul of each person, and he is able to capture that. So we can move on then. Steven Spielberg said that when we follow our dream, when we follow creativity, that many of us expect it to come as this great shout, as this great right between the eyes. And he said more often than not, it comes as a whisper. It comes instead of right between the eyes, it comes behind the head. And he said our job, our task, is the willingness to be able to listen to that whisper and then to follow it. And he said, when we are willing to listen to the whisper and we're willing to follow it, then the rest of the world benefits from it. So every week, we benefit from Aaron and all of our wonderful musicians and artists. We benefit from Annie and the tapestries. We benefit from Jeffrey and Gordon. We benefited today from Carl sharing his intimate thoughts. So when we move in the direction of our dreams and our creativity, remember that we are moving towards divinity. And these unique gifts, this unique divinity, benefits the whole planet. So go forth and create and give over to that inner artist archetype.